Good morning, good afternoon, good evening from wherever you might be calling in today, and welcome to Colorado Career Connectors. I'm Shelley, along with Yvette Bell, and we will be starting in just a moment. We have an awesome topic for you today, and two of my awesome colleagues are going to be here to talk about interviewing and truly how to show up as your authentic self. So while you are getting comfortable, I know it's lunchtime here in Colorado. It might be an hour later or 2 hours later, wherever you're calling in from your time zone. I see lots of black boxes, and we actually like to talk to people instead of black boxes. So please, 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 please put yourself on video. We don't care if you're in your pajamas. We don't care if you have a Saturday Night Live egghead on. Like, we just want to see you, and we want you to be you, which is why today's topic is going to talk about the fun conversation of a hiring conversation. And that is what I call it. It's a hiring conversation, but it's out there defined as interviewing. And how many of you want to blah with this topic of interviewing? Kind of. Does it make you nervous a little bit?
If it's when you do it right, or when they play right, when everyone plays nicely, it can be a really fun conversation.
Well, that's fantastic. So welcome, Anne-Marie, Joni, Daisy, Barry. We got Barry Birch in the house. That's awesome. Jamie Gatt, Lisa Ritara, Janae, Selena, Sandra de Almeida, Christine. It's really nice to have all of you here. We have over 70 people registered. We'll probably get up to about 30. But you know what? We're just glad you're here. This is being recorded. This will be sent out to you afterward. We are going to go right up until 1 o'clock. So make sure you have a pen and a paper or your phone to take screenshots, or your snip tool out, because this session is going to be packed full of tips and advice for you. So it looks like we're getting some good chat in there. All right, can you all see my screen okay? Yes, all right. Yvette's gonna be monitoring the chat. Yvette, you wanna say hi to everybody?
Hi, everyone. So good to see you all.
Yes, put in there your LinkedIn profile, please, what you're looking for. Because interviewing, the way that many of my clients have gotten interviews is through networking. And so I really encourage all of you to network with people that you see in our community. And this is a true community. If this is your first time or your 18th time, Colorado Career Connectors welcomes everyone. We strongly believe in diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. And we'll talk a little bit about that and what that means for us. I see lots of things going on. Okay, so let's go ahead and get going here. I am Shelley Johnson. If I have not met you, I would love to chat with you one-on-one. I am a survivor and refugee of corporate. I left corporate in 2019 because I had my own great resignation. I was completely burnt out, stressed, and overwhelmed, and I felt like my soul was dying. Can anybody relate to that? I'm seeing some heads shake. And even if you're not on video, again, we want you to come on audio and video, please.
Yeah,
and anyway, in 2019, I was thinking, I have been in HR and staffing and recruiting and done all these big HR programs for Fortune 50 companies. I certainly can try to be an entrepreneur. And so I put my stake in the ground and I started. And then in 2021, I saw a gap in the market where job seekers and career professionals who wanted real, authentic, high quality leaders to have access to leaders and speakers that they would never have access to. I thought, you know what, let's start a meetup And I'm going to bring that audience to job seekers. And we have grown to over 1,000 people in a year. So thank you so much. If you know people who can benefit from learning about what it's really like behind the recruitment curtain, or that want to meet speakers like Monica and Sarah that I'm going to introduce you today, we have people from all over the world. We've had people from Africa, from Europe, from Latin-speaking countries, because yo soy bilingüe, and I do speak Spanish fluently. So please help get the word out to everyone. What I do is I'm a master connector, and a lot of my clients are landing. In fact, I have 4 stories for you. In my business, which is called Best You Career Advantage, I help women, diversity leaders, especially focusing on the LGBTQIA market and Hispanic market, to unleash their professional edge. Now, Megan, whom you may have met, Megan just started with the Princeton Review, and they made a role for her. She is, for the Midwest and East Territories, building a whole new field sales strategy for Princeton Review. Then there's Andy. Andy worked at Access TV as a technical producer for over 12 years and just got a big bump in pay and is a technical account manager for digital and strategy with Adobe. And then there's Elizabeth. Elizabeth is now working as the head of digital marketing strategy for AARP. And one of my past employees at Comcast, Miley, is now a lead recruiter at Meta or Facebook. So this is the impact that our network has. So if you need help fast tracking your promotion, helping to align your values with your current position, or you're just looking for something different, please reach out and let me help you. And Yvette, if you can put my appointment schedule in there, I'd really appreciate it. I offer 30-minute free sessions. I'm not salesy, and I promise you will get something out of it via a LinkedIn assessment, looking at your resume, whatever you need, or a career strategy. All right. Now, Yvette is my right hand, and she is the one that puts out all of this for me. I'm so lucky to have her in my life. She's been with me for over a year. And she and I are going to Spain and Portugal to walk El Camino de Santiago, starting in Porto, and we have a few spots open. I'm leading a tour. If you're interested, let me know. This is part of how we get you aligned with your true inner purpose, so that you can have the best career and abundant life possible. Our sponsors for Colorado Career Connector are Anna Brambilla, who is going to be speaking to us in 3 weeks about battered corporate syndrome, and Shelley Shell. Shelley is a financial strategist and partner with Prism Financial. We also have many companies like Zendesk, DocuSign, Actilent, Gallus that have also sponsored us. And we always are looking to partner with the right HR teams or talent teams so that we can continue to bring this amazing content to you.
Shelly, just to let you know, you're not actually screen sharing right now.
Oh my God.
I think I just heard you clicking through on a slide.
I am. Okay,
Sorry.
let me screen share. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Can you guys see that now? Okay.
Perfect. Thank
you, Yvette.
Yeah.
This is why she's my right hand, because it is Monday, right? Okay, so let me just go back for 1 second. Thank you. That's Yvette. This is where you can get in touch with me. I'm at Best You Career Advantage, and I'd love to chat with you. Okay, thank you, Yvette. Yvette also has her own business because we are both solopreneurs, women-owned businesses. If you need a logo, any type of branding, a website, she is your person. Love Yvette. These are our sponsors. Okay. Today and in 2 weeks from now, our focus is on interviewing and that hiring conversation. Today, we have 2 good friends of mine that are going to talk about interviewing, but we're going to go a lot deeper into interviewing, about how our styles affect our communication within interviewing and how adjusting your style will really work. So we'll jump into that in just a minute. In 2 weeks, on the 6th of June, we have Keith Bailey and Elise Bloom from Articulated Intelligence that are talking about master storytellers for interviews. Now, they have talked and presented with us before and have some of the best ratings. So I highly recommend that you make that. And then after that, we have one of our sponsors, Anna Brambilla, Battered Corporate and Career Syndrome. So if any of you are in a toxic boss situation, toxic work arena, that is the event you want to be at. If you haven't subscribed yet to Colorado Career Connectors, we have community resources out there for you. If you're looking for a resume writer, we have 3 resume writers that are very well known: Lisa Carmen, Nikki Massman, and Asali Locke Ellison. We also have websites for you of where you can find jobs, including Andrew Hudson Job List, Built in Colorado, etc. And we have podcasts that either I've been on, my friends are running, that are really good for your resources. So be sure to look at our community resources. I'm super excited to have Monica Faberman, who is an HR consultant, leadership coach, and does leadership and HR consulting for small to medium-sized businesses, along with Sarah Blake. And Sarah and I know each other for a few years now because we have the same business coach. She is an ACC coach, which means that she and I are both educated and certified to coach you. And today I'm going to turn it over to Monica and Sarah to really dig in to help you with interviewing and how to be your authentic self. So welcome, Monica and Sarah.
Thank you, Shelley. I will take over screen sharing. Yeah, thank you for that intro. And I can definitely speak on behalf of myself and Sarah. We're very excited to be here and to be speaking with you all about this topic. You guys can see, one second, my screen here. Can everyone see this okay?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yes, we got screen share going. Awesome. All right. Yep. We're going to be chatting about interviewing and how to show up as your whole and authentic self. The first half of our time together, we're going to be sharing some insights around interviews that we've picked up from myself, Shelley, and Sarah being on both sides of the interviewing conversation. And then we're going to chat about assessments and how assessments can help with the interview process. We're going to specifically be talking about CultureTalk. I just put a link in the chat for everyone. This is you're welcome. This is an assessment that both myself and Sarah are certified partners in. Shelley has participated and gotten her results, so we're also going to be having a conversation around how it's helped us and people that we know move through different phases of their interviewing career. All right. So also, as an icebreaker, I would love to hear in the chat how everyone feels to get a pulse check on how you feel about interviewing. You can put 3 words or thoughts into the chat. Everyone seems to be very much engaged with the chat, but I also want to encourage participation through the chat. All right, we got nervous, excited, unsure. I think that message went directly to me. We got the broad spectrum. It is exciting. It can definitely be a little nerve-wracking with not going in, hard to sell myself. Yeah, that's can be really difficult to talk about yourself. Networking, really, that's great. Networking is a great way to look at it. It takes a little bit of the pressure off, I feel like. Yeah.
Somebody had put in there, it's hard to sell themselves. And that's actually something we're going to talk about that and help you reframe that thought.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Reframing that and awkward, stressful, right? These are all the things. Rusty, we got someone coming back into the game maybe. Well, thank you guys. And we're going to do, just as a plan to seed, another pulse check in the end to see if maybe some of this has shifted a little bit. Yeah, it's a weird process. I get that. I do interviews. On the other side, I'm the HR person, and I totally understand how it can be awkward and intimidating. All right. And yeah, so sounds like you guys are all great on the chat. And so keep the questions coming throughout the content. So we're going to kick off with some myths about interviewing, do some interview myth busting. These are things that I've heard a lot of people say and feel around the interviewing process. So the first one is, the primary purpose of an interview is for the company to see if I'm a good fit for the role. And again, I'd just like to challenge this because I'd say, of course, this is part of it, but I'd say that interviews are really a two-way conversation. And I really want people to interview the company just as much as the company is interviewing them. And this might feel scary if you feel a lot of pressure to find a job right now, but it really is a shift from I just need a job to I want to find the job that's going to be the best fit for me. And so it shifts the power a little bit back to you. And you can do this by asking questions about the culture. So what's the culture like? Ask your manager and your coworkers what your manager's communication style is like. Ask questions about what they're looking for to really see if what they're looking for is going to be a good fit for where you're at and where you want to go, and have them tell you some of those questions, so you can factor that information into your decision. Then, a successful interview is one where I make a good impression and move on to the next round. And yes, of course, this is the goal that we're all aiming towards. But I would say that a successful interview is one where you're able to confidently and authentically express yourself, your experience, and your aspirations and how this fits into that. And if you're able to do these two things where you're getting information from them on what they're looking for, and you come into the conversation, feeling really confident and prepared to talk about who you are, then even if one side, it might be you, it might be them, decides not to move forward, I would still consider that a success because that you portrayed yourself accurately, and then this might not have actually been the best fit that would have been best in the long run. So finally, bringing your whole authentic self to work is the ultimate ideal for everyone, which is something that I recently learned about through this DEI certification course. I'm going to put a link in the chat. It is a 15-minute TED Talk by this woman named Jodi Ann Burry. And it's really wonderful. I highly recommend everyone watch it. 15 minutes of your time, put it on 2x. It's 7 or 8 minutes of your time. And she talks about why you should not bring your authentic self to work and why it's not always safe for everyone to bring their whole and authentic self to work. And I really want to honor that. We're going to talk a lot about authenticity as a key to success here. And what we mean is authentic confidence in yourself and creating an authentic connection without that pressure to, here's the link. Without that pressure, or expectation, because I think the reality is, in fact, that sometimes it really isn't safe to bring your authentic self to work. How are we defining authentic self? I mean, that's a great question. We're going to talk a little bit about communication. This is just the ability to kind of be free and be who you are, without fitting into a specific box that might be uncomfortable. Throughout this process of doing these CultureTalk assessments, people really identify places where they have been fitting into strengths of other styles and not able to really maximize their personal strengths. So when we talk about defining authentic self, this is just being, I don't know, does that answer your question, I guess, without repeating it? And if anyone else has anything else to add to that, definitely feel free.
Part of my background is emotional intelligence coaching. And one of the squares that we talk about when it comes to emotional intelligence is really knowing yourself. And so that is part of what CultureTalk and assessments will bring to the table, is to be able to see yourself through a different lens that you may not always be able to see yourself as, because we're so in our own heads a lot of the time. And it gives you a framework to say, oh, this is where my strengths are. This is how I'm going to show up, or I'm going to show up with this part of my archetype for this interview. And somebody had asked the question also, how do you balance selling yourself in a positive outlook while still asking the tough questions? That will all depend also then on your strengths of the archetype and how you show up. So once we get to that part of the presentation, we can look at that a little bit deeper.
Yeah, and I'll say that, everyone here has a lot to give, has a lot to give, a lot to contribute to a company. I mean, you're here, you're in this workshop, you're seeking ways, you're already here, you're asking the questions. So to me, that's you're already, on the right path, and you are investing in this process with your time and everything here. So you have a lot to give just by that simple fact that I know about you. And so it's really a matter of, and we're going to talk about how you communicate that, because it's hard to see yourself. You might ask a friend, they might tell you XYZ things, but it can be really hard to see yourself and to advocate for sell yourself. It can feel really icky. I think all of us entrepreneurs here, I hire someone else to write my bio, for my website. So even for us that kind of are used to talking about it, it can still feel a little weird. So on that topic, what do we consider effective communication? We'll define that as confidently communicating who you are and what you bring to the table in a way that's clearly understood by the interviewer, which is a perfect segue from what we were talking about. And I'll also say, for any of you, I guess, fact people who like the facts and the data, recruiters, they did an eye tracking study, and recruiters spend 7 seconds on looking at your resume. So your resume, and I can say that I'm a recruiter, I glance through resumes. I'm like, this person, I want to talk to them. This person I don't see as a good fit. This person, hey, I want to see maybe a little bit more. That your resume will get you in the door, but thank you. Your resume will get you in the door, but this is your opportunity. I tell this to people all the time who are nervous. You know who you are. They have no idea who you are. It's your job to communicate that. And the words that you use in that scenario do matter. And Sarah's going to give us a great example of that.
So as Monica said, words matter. I can say the word flower, and this is what pops into your head. However, when I say it, this is what I mean. So when we say words are important, it's not only the words, but then also being clear in the definition. I was actually thinking back to a time when I had interviewed for a job. At this point, it was probably 20 years ago. And on my resume, I had something written down like SAP knowledge. And in my mind, SAP was the software system. However, my interviewer, who worked in the defense security intelligence industry, knew SAP as Special Access Program. And so when they saw my resume and we started talking about it, they got all excited because they thought I had this defense background, and we were talking about 2 totally different things. It made the interview a little awkward there for a little bit, but that's an example, again, not only flower, but acronyms, and why it's important to be really clear and concise in how you communicate.
Sarah, I have a couple of examples like that as well.
Perfect.
So in the recruitment world, we have as recruiters to source candidates. So I had a team at Lockheed Martin of sourcers underneath me, but sourcing is also used most of the time for purchasing or materials management. And when I say, oh, I work in sourcing, they're like, oh, you're in materials management. No, I look for people to land jobs. So that's another example of that. So I agree with you. And going back to effective communications, we could do an entire hour and a half plus on the right type of effective communications from a branding perspective, from how you reach out to templates, from what your LinkedIn looks like. And little secret for everyone, I just applied to get a LinkedIn ambassador. to work directly with Colorado Career Connectors. And we're working on bringing to you Rock Your LinkedIn World. So that is coming very soon. So you do have to be careful with those pieces. So I just thought I would interject that.
It totally depends on the industry. It depends on the background of the interviewer. And so part of our presentation today is about showing up not only authentically as yourself and being able to communicate effectively, it's really also knowing who you're talking to. And we'll keep coming back to the underlying theme of stories through our conversation today. And when we talk about facts versus story, I mean, this slide has been up, so you guys have already read it, but to know that when your brain in reading bullet points is very one word, very concise, but when your brain is reading a story, it makes it more colorful and it's more alive, such as when I was telling the flower story, not only did you have the visual, but then I was able to give you a background story and connect even more so. And then that sparked something in Shelley to then share. And this is how storytelling and connecting with the interviewer, it becomes more of a conversation as opposed to just you rattling off facts about who you are.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So storytelling is to be human. Again, we're going to talk a lot about storytelling. Stories are handed down from generations to generations. This is one thing I really want you to walk away with today. We are biologically hardwired to connect through stories. And this is important because when you're interviewing and you're showing up as yourself, you show up through your stories. And you choose those stories that you want to share and connect with your interviewers. Okay.
This is why it's so important that each of you have at least 10 to 15 different stories for your interviews. And this week and next week, or by aligning one-on-one with us, we can help you write those stories. That's another thing about that effective communication. You have to take it from here and be able to speak your truth in the interview, in being your confident, authentic self. So I just put in the chat, if you're looking for resume writers for that effective communication, there's 3 people that can help you. All right, Sarah, go ahead.
Okay, we can go on to the next slide.
Yeah, no, those are all really, really great resources. And really, again, on this same theme of storytelling, I can say specifically in interviews, as someone, occasionally I'll do the HR phone screen piece of the interview for the clients that I work with. And the candidates that I felt most strongly about moving on in the interview process and oftentimes end up kind of getting an offer at the end are the ones where right off the bat, they're able to paint this very clear picture of who they are, what it's like working with them, how they solve problems, just kind of everything that they're about. I can literally see it. It makes sense to me. And it's this concept called empathetic listening from this book. It's a Who, the A Method for Hiring, which I have mixed feelings about, but this one piece, I was like, yes, that is the one thing that I can say that really stands out amongst the candidates that move on. And this really comes from candidates who know themselves really well, and to this next point, not only do they know themselves really well, but they have a good relationship to their story. Oh, this is great, Jennifer. We're going to get to that in the next slide here. But understanding your relationship to your story, for example, when I started my career, I was a receptionist. I spent 2 years as a receptionist at a venture capital firm, and I had some kind of shame around that. I would say I was an admin assistant, I didn't fully own it, and I would kind of glaze over it. It just didn't land when I was talking about it, and I just kind of really wanted to just move on from it. But once I changed my relationship to that piece of my story, I saw how it really set me on the path that I'm on today in ways that I don't know how else I would have done that. It really changed the relationship to my story. And so now I'm just able to talk about it with a lot more ease, and it just integrates much better. So shifting confidence in parts of your story that you may not, you may have a different perspective on. And then again, as you know, has also been brought up here, matching your story to your audience, understand who you're talking to. I mentioned this in the chat earlier. Yeah, thanks, Charlie, for that. That's very true about clear, concise, and impactful stories. Sorry, I think it's important, especially when you first start an interview process, to ask who else is in the interview process and what their relationship to the role is, so that you can understand, as an HR person, that's not very technical. In some cases, I'll say, I'm not the tech expert, you're the industry tech expert. And even then, sometimes if people get really granular, you know, that's not impactful for me, but those are the types of things that they should definitely share with their hiring manager. You know, in small businesses, sometimes you'll be talking to the owner who wants to see if you're a culture fit. So just understanding who people are and how they're relating to the role will help you tailor your message a lot.
We have a question from Yusuf about how, as a new graduate, you can practice storytelling. Stay tuned. That's what we're going to talk about now. And we have a very specific framework on the 6th of June. That is exactly what we're going to be training you how to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is, someone asked about structure, and Shelley, you've worked with structure similar to the STAR method. Do you want to chat about this for a minute?
Sure. We're just going to spend 1 minute on this because you can look out on LinkedIn videos, the STAR methodology. There's hundreds of free videos out there for you on YouTube, wherever you look. As a certified interview coach, I'm always training people to really hammer and be very good at telling stories through the STAR format. The S is, what's the situation? Take me through the situation that you particularly did. A lot of times as candidates, we'll say we, because we don't want the spotlight to just be on us, but we want to know what you did. And then either the situation or the task. Then what were the action items that you specifically took in that situation? And when I say action items, let me give you an example. When I started Colorado Career Connectors, I looked at the market, assessed the best speakers, looked at the calendaring, you're hearing me state past tense verbs. So in your actions, you bullet point the past tense verbs that you did for that situation. And then you talk about the outcome or the result. And it's when you have an incomplete STAR is when hiring leaders or managers or people like me who are on the other side of the table, if you have an incomplete STAR, we're going to ask you probing questions or follow-up questions to get a complete story. So there's a lot of free information out there, but this is the framework for you. It can also be called CAR, challenge, action, result, SOAR, situation, obstacles. So no matter what the framework, it really does come off of the targeted selection training that's been out there for over 20 years called STAR.
Yeah, no, that's a really great framework. And that happens sometimes. I agree, when I'll be in an interview and I don't quite get the whole picture and I am asking questions, and then, which, you know, isn't a terrible thing, but also, you know, it's easiest, the best interviews I've had are when things are very conversational. I'm able to get all the information because that's really the objective, that your HR person or whoever kind of wants. They're looking for specific information, and these stories really help paint that picture. Okay. Do I have to have quantifiable results? I think you can talk about the impact that you had if you made something more efficient or you solved a problem. It doesn't have to be a number quantifiable, but definitely the impact that you had in that situation, for sure.
Jennifer, in that, it depends on who you're interviewing with. If you are interviewing with a very data-oriented person, the more metrics that you can have in your outcomes, the more you're going to be speaking their language.
Yeah, And yeah, and to that point, if you don't want to work somewhere where they really value that, maybe that's something you can assess in the interview process as well. Because if that's going to be really like icky for you to do, and that's a skill I've had to learn is how to quantify things for sure. It didn't come naturally to me, but it's something that I have learned and been more comfortable with. Yes, do research on people that see like, what they've accomplished, what they've done, what you might have in common, all of that. They'll show that you kind of are invested in the process. Absolutely. Whoops, I haven't even talked about that slide yet.
Completely agree.
So now we'll move on to, how assessments can help and be tools for you in this whole process. So I'd love to hear in the chat, I know myself, I've worked with a number of assessments. We're going to be talking about CultureTalk, but if anyone has thoughts on assessments or assessments that they've used that have been helpful or not helpful, we'd love to hear those in the chat. But what they can do is they can help you build confidence and relationship to your story. Like Sarah said, you're kind of seeing your story and your strength from a different perspective. I had someone who I worked with during a job transition very recently. I checked in with them and I said, hey, I didn't even tell them the interviewing piece of this talk that I was giving, but I said, hey, I'm going to be chatting about CultureTalk with a group of people. And they said, oh, that assessment really helped me get this job that they feel much more comfortable in than a job that they weren't really a great fit for before that they were leaving. And what it did is it really helped them define their strengths in a way that they could see them super clearly and then articulate them of what they were about and what their values were. So then once you learn the framework, you're able to own your own style and recognize other people's styles. Like Shelly was just saying, if you see someone who is going to be asking about the data, that they might want just bullet points. They might want that like top line impact versus someone who is a little bit more maybe relationship oriented and wants to understand a little bit more of the details. And then again, finding words to effectively communicate. When you read your assessment results, there'll be things that you really strongly resonate. It might not be everything, but there'll be things that really jump out to you and really resonate with you. And then you can use those words in your conversations with people that might describe things that you maybe didn't really have the tools to describe before. All right.
Okay, so we have talked about assessments, and I saw a couple of people had strength finders. I don't know if you guys are familiar with DISC. There's the Myers-Briggs. So when you think about assessments, there's a lot of different assessments out there. I actually have a spreadsheet of all of the assessments I have taken because I'm like, I want to be able to better effectively communicate my strengths and who I am. And so we've been talking about this CultureTalk assessment, and CultureTalk is based around archetypes. And the reason Monica and I are really, and Shelly, drawn to the archetypes is because it provides a deep structure for human motivation in meeting. That is the foundation of your conversations. That is the foundation of storytelling. Archetypes show up in marketing, branding, storytelling. We encounter them in art, literature, sacred texts, advertising. They evoke the deep feelings within us. We are, again, biologically wired to connect through stories, and that's because stories bring out emotions, and you want to have those emotions of confidence and that people have confidence in you to be able to do the task. So the framework for the power and excitement, one of the other reasons why we really like the archetypes. They show up without judgment, no good, no bad. It's strengths and shadows. They're relatable. They're fluid. They're adaptable. They're memorable. That is what we want for you all, is to be memorable when you show up in your interviews, and meaningful. The why behind. Okay.
So yeah, we want to make sure we have some great conversations. So we're going to kind of pick up the pace, but at its core, this is, because we have some discussions around CultureTalk. At its core, it is, what is it? It's a 72 question assessment that's been validated through data science, and you get your score across 12 archetypes, which we'll talk about on the next slide. And then it'll give you an in-depth description of how these archetypes show up in different situations, their strengths, their shadows, as we talked about. And then there's an option for a validation experience where you will work one-on-one with a coach like Sarah or myself who are certified in this assessment to really dive deep and do a deeper dive and a deeper connection with your strengths and shadows. It's really cool. That's something that Shelley also participated in.
And going through the validation exercise, it also draws out a lot of your stories. And so that's extremely helpful in that way. So welcome. Let us introduce you to the archetypes. So one of the reasons, assessments in general allow you to better understand and connect with yourself. What the archetypes do is that they are deep and universal, and it's a different way to connect with others because we all have the capacity to have all these 12 storylines. So, Shelley, I know that you took the assessment, and first, can you share with us what was your primary archetype and what were your secondary archetypes?
Sure. So I would, first of all, ask that the audience and all of you take a photo of this and look into this, because this has really helped me as a leader, as a coach, and as a solopreneur to understand who my audience is. And so when I did this, I realized that the content was absolutely something I wanted to share with my community and all of you. So to answer your question, Sarah, I'm a ruler. And what that means is that I'm really well connected, that I value deep relationships, that I like to take charge, that I am a leader in my field. And I'm also an every person. And an every person really means inclusivity and acceptance and an open door to all types of people in my community. And it's kind of like the Three Musketeers, one all for one and one for all. I always find commonalities in how I approach things, and every person is about being real and authentic and honest. My last one is hero, and hero sees the bigger picture. They're more disciplined. They are courageous and brave. And I definitely get called those adjectives in my work. And they have a strong sense of what the community needs. So how all three of those show up is that I can build this community for you with very strong mission of diversity and inclusion and equity and belonging. I am a solopreneur that had to get through a lot of fear. So just like the fear that all of you feel in that interview, you take that, you understand your own style, and you think about it from a soul perspective. Because what's hijacking you are all of these limiting beliefs that are not letting your true voice come out. So when you can truly learn what your style is, now, the shadow side of being a ruler is that sometimes I can be seen as intimidating because my energy is so like, let's get it going, and I'm results oriented, right? So I would love for all of you to further look at what is your style, and then how do you translate that and make small pivots so that you can get out of your head and get into your true voice, especially as women and those of us that have been marginalized or undervalued, or we're overworking for someone else. That's what the real impact of this work is.
Thank you for sharing that, Shelley. One last question. What was the biggest aha for you after you read the reports and went through the validation exercise?
The biggest aha for me is that no matter how much I try to hide from it, I am a ruler. And sometimes that doesn't, I don't have to be in the front, but I do have that energy where, like, I'm a Zumba instructor. I love teaching, and allyship with people. So I realized that it was spot on, that the explorer and the hero absolutely align with it, but that it also taught me how to leverage my style and change it in different ways when working with different clients or going to different customers. Yeah.
Okay.
So we've got
Yeah,
some
thank
cool
you.
things in the chat. They're always interesting and tell me the company is looking to get to know people. So it looks like some of you are already recognizing maybe what your archetype
Right.
is. That's awesome.
And I can tell you, it's really interesting going through before getting certified and going through getting my results. There's certain ones I really thought I was, and I was not those as my primary and secondary. And it wasn't until I dug down into the report and it was like, oh, okay, this is how I'm showing up differently. And Shelley, thank you for bringing up the shadow side, because as you guys are going into interviews and everything that you were talking about at the beginning, the anxiety, the stress, that is sometimes where your shadow side will show up when it's the heightened emotions. And so if you can figure out what's your archetype and how are you showing up and what's that shadow side, you can identify it a lot quicker to be able to turn off the shadow side to then rely on the strength side of you, and to be able to then, and because there's that framework, you have the words and the knowledge to pull on to give you that strength and that confidence for the interview. Okay, Monica, I'm going to ask you just a couple of questions real quick too. What is your primary and secondary archetypes?
So my three, and they kind of interchange, they come out at different times. But I'd say one of my primary is creator, and then secondary, and sometimes they take the primary seat, are every person and jester.
Okay. And was this a surprise to you when you got the results?
In some ways it was a surprise. In some ways it was a little validating also. And something that Sarah has mentioned this too, to look at is each of these 12 archetypes are so much deeper than the one word that describes them. Sometimes I almost like looking at the symbol more so. But for the jester, at least, understanding that archetype was really helpful for me, because I do have a really playful side. Even in the workplace, I bring humor in a lot. And I felt early in my career that it was really hard for me to be taken seriously. And because I was maybe like leaning on, and there were some also shadow aspects of the jester that were showing up, or using humor kind of as like a defense mechanism or something like that. And so when I read Jester and really learned about Jester, it was a little surprising, but also really validating, because I saw the strengths of the Jester, which were, trusted counsel, delivering difficult news with grace and compassion, and making light, bringing people from darker situations into like a little bit more of a lighter environment.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was able to really lean into the strengths, because before I did this assessment, I felt like I had to just be more serious and less jester. And that's not the takeaway. The takeaway was lean into the strengths and identify and mitigate the shadow. And so that was surprising to me. The jester was kind of out of left field, but once I got to know it, it was really helpful.
The jester was interesting for me when I was reading about them, because they are so creative and problem solving. That was when I was like, oh, I never would have associated that with the title.
Right. Because it's all about, okay, the sky is falling. Great. Let's figure out how we're going to kind of move through this difficult situation and
not be so stressful about it.
Yeah.
Okay. We are getting close on time. So that's my questions for you both.
Sarah, do we have time for you to share? What time?
So I am a hero is my primary. And because, I just can't be normal, I had 3 that tied for a secondary, which is lover, magician, and sage, which I had a lot of ahas. Like I said, I've done a lot of assessments, and the hero and sage tend to contradict each other in a lot of ways. In some scenarios, it'd be like, let's get it done, let's go. In other scenarios, I'd sit in the shadow side of the sages. You overthink, you think, and then you think some more, which is very contradictory of the hero, let's go. And I could never figure out why sometimes I'd show up in one way and other times I'd show up in a different way. And it was purely which one of my archetypes was showing up at the time with the scenario. And so this was I call this the whole person assessment. I use this as the foundational work for my emotional intelligence coaching. This is the one thing that made me go, oh, I don't have split personalities. This is just how I'm showing up depending on the scenario and where my shadows or strengths are showing up.
Yeah. And I feel like in terms of selling yourself too, some of these things, like I've done 2 assessments with people that were really struggling to fit in and find a good fit. And they were the lover, like you talked about that being one, caregiver and innocent. And those strengths of those aren't necessarily always valued on the surface, and being able to talk about them and learning these archetypes gives you tools to really talk about the benefits and what you have to contribute with those archetypes too. And each of them is, I could say the same about each of them actually. All right. There's one question. Do they have a price tag? Yes. So there is a free quiz on the CultureTalk website. And if you like that and want more, then there are price points if you just want the assessment versus if you want to do the validation exercise. I believe Sarah and I talked about the validation exercise being a 60 minutes plus the assessment for $350. But we'll talk about if you sign up this week, there's a 10% discount. The assessment on its own is about $120. All right, so we're gonna move on from the slide, but while you guys populate, I'd love to hear how you guys feel about interviews, if this has shifted anything for you. So while we kind of conclude, I would love to, to hear that in the chat. And we actually are doing okay at this point, but we'll talk about resources and next steps available.
Let's real quick, Jolene asked a question. Do any of these assessments have options for others to assess you? Not necessarily when it comes to the CultureTalk, but you can do, and what I recommend, what I had done with a couple of small businesses, the owners and the general managers and some people on their team, we did individual assessments, and then we got everybody together to do the validation exercises. And there's so many tools and resources about how the different archetypes show up and play together and where there could be conflict. And so it's not necessarily how other people see you, it's how are you showing up, and how do you show up in your archetype and how they show up in their archetypes. Do you have anything else to add to that, Monica?
Yeah, when you do work with a coach, a CultureTalk certified partner, they have such a depth of knowledge and access to resources. So there's, if you have someone in your life who you maybe can armchair kind of assign an archetype to, you can see where there might be conflict, where you overlap. And where you differentiate. There's also tip sheets on how different archetypes respond to stress, and how they, just real quick tip sheets so you can get a picture of, who someone in your life might be. So when you do work with someone, you can kind of it is kind of just between you and the coach. But it would be really interesting to share these stories with people who you work with and say, and then start to see how that shifts. And as you kind of lean into your strengths and ask them if they see that, I think those are always great conversations to have.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yes, knowing your bosses. So I do this a lot with leadership teams, especially between the CEO and the leadership team, about getting everyone on the same page, so that, and I tell the CEO, like, hey, it's going to be really beneficial for you to understand everyone's styles and for everyone to more deeply understand your style. I think it'll make everyone's life a little easier. But again, I would love to hear if this has shifted how people feel about interviews. Would love to hear that in the chat as well. All Yeah.
Okay, so wrapping up, as you guys hopefully will start populating the chat, just a reminder who I am. I am Sarah. I am a CultureTalk partner. I'm a DISC trainer. I'm a 5 behaviors trainer. I'm also an ICF ACC coach with designation in leadership and emotional intelligence. I am also a corporate storyteller. And the foundation of my work is when there is alignment with our stories, our values, and our surroundings, there's alignment within.
Awesome. Thank you.
And, you know, and Shelley brought up at the very beginning, going through the Great Resignation. I personally have been calling this the Great Realignment. I actually have an article out there. And a lot of this is realizing who we are, and that's the power behind these assessments. What are your values? What are your stories? Not the stories that other people have told you how to show up, and the right surroundings for you. And that's, you know, company cultures, family, and finding that alignment. A lot of that is that first step of emotional intelligence, figuring out really who you are.
Yeah.
So as we come to 12:55, for those of you who do have to jump off, we completely understand. I'm going to stay on until about 1:10 to answer any questions that you might have, just so that you know we will be going a little bit long. And I'm very happy to answer, along with, if Monica and Sarah can stay, on any actual questions that you have that are tactical.
Yes, definitely.
Monica, I didn't mean to interrupt your flow.
No, thank you. We're all in it. We're all flowing. So it's all part of it. And thank you. And I agree. And I think it's important to tell people that before we get cut off too, because I'm sure a lot of people drop off at 1. But you guys have heard a little bit about me through these stories. But I'm an HR consultant for small to medium-sized businesses, typically working with the owner or the founder and the leadership team on bridging the gap between humans and resources at work. You know, I believe I have a library, you know, of HR best practices, but, you know, I also believe in getting to know people and learning about them and making custom solutions for each of my clients, and understanding everyone has the ability to lead from any position. And then understanding what resources, you know, policies, practices everyone needs to feel comfortable and able to do their work. I'm a CultureTalk partner. I am a certified coach as well, DEI certified, fractional HR leader and consultant, and I do facilitation for a lot of my clients as well. And I love reading tarot cards. That's just a little fun fact about me. Their archetypes are also in tarot cards. That's all tarot cards are, archetypes. So that's, I guess, a little bit about me. And yeah, please reach out. I think we would all love to stay in touch. And I think we have a few more resources, available. There is the CultureTalk mini quiz. Sarah has a really great free ebook on personal values on her website. So definitely bookmark that. And I have a free consultation on my website. Feel free to use that button or email me. And we also talked about, if you would like to reach out, I'll put this in the chat, our emails, and thank you, Yvette, for putting our contact information in there as well. We are offering 10% off if you'd like to do a CultureTalk validation session with us, either one of us, through Friday. Just mention Colorado Career Connectors in your email. I don't know, Sarah, Shelley, is there anything else?
Monica and Sarah, thank you so much for joining us today. There's a question in the chat about what other tips I have to being your authentic self, and we're going to absolutely get to that. I hope that all of you will let your friends know, let other people in your companies know that when they want real, authentic, genuine discussions that are brutally honest, to come to Colorado Career Connectors. Again, this recording will be sent out. I am the founder and CEO, Shelley Johnson, and I can personally help you with all of your career strategy needs, but I bring on experts and partners like Monica and Sarah that are deeper dive into certain aspects. So please reach out to whoever can help you. Our contact information will be in there. We have newsletters that you can also get with lots of tips in them. And so now that we are right at 1 o'clock, if you do need to go, we understand. But I'm going to take the first question of what other tips do you need to be authentic? A lot of times when you are looking for advancement or promotions and you have these limiting beliefs, that inner judge that sabotages you or hijacks you from being your best, no matter how much preparation you do for interviews or no matter how much you understand your own style, if you don't have the right mental fitness or positive intelligence and really stop the thoughts, but take it from your heart-centered, soul-inspired truth, then your story is not going to show up correctly. And through COVID and the past 2.5 years, what we've all been through, disconnection, disalignment with values and the company, and just this realignment that Sarah calls it, and this reassessment or the big quit. There's 41 million people over the past 5 months that have quit their jobs, right? If that is you, that's because you want something deeper. You're not making a big enough impact. And you know, you're feeling it, like that intuition that you have is talking to you, but up here, you're like so scared. And that fear is running your life. On June 14th, I'm actually going to be having a live event you will see out on Colorado Career Connectors. It's called Unleash Your Intuitive Edge. It's going to be with a friend of mine. And Monica, now that I know you read tarot cards, I'm going to have you come and maybe read some tarot cards. My friend Hope Hughes is a Reiki master, and she's going to do some crystal readings. And if that's too woo-woo for you, that's okay. But I believe it takes all different types of energies to help us get to where we are. So be looking for that. Again, it's called Unleash Your Intuitive Edge. And then on July 28th, I am bringing in a craft beer expert who is a woman. She owned her own brewery, and we are going to craft your life. We're going to do craft beer and some desserts, and we're going to have you build a craft so that we can get you thinking about how do you want to craft your life. All of these things we bring you are for you to be your best. And again, going back to, in order to be your authentic self, you've got to listen to your gut. You've got to follow your intuition. And you've got to get aligned with your mental fitness. Whether it's Gina or Jolene, there's a few people who have worked through positive intelligence with me. If you guys have any comments out there, I have a program that's 7 weeks on that. And Jolene and Gina and 60 other people that I've taken through the program can tell you it is transformative, transformational, if you're consistent, if you do the work.
Yeah.
Okay, what other questions are we getting in there?
If I can add to that one, just like you're saying, doing the work, it is kind of like a muscle. So I definitely recommend practicing in places where maybe you feel more comfortable. And then, because in my experience, a shift in one place leads to a shift in another place, whether it's work, school, family, home, if you're trying to get into that more authentic place. So start where you're comfortable, and then kind of practice in places where maybe you're less comfortable, maybe work is one of those places. But I see there's one, how do you read your interviewer?
I think that's a whole nother workshop, to be honest with you.
I have some thoughts on this.
Yeah.
In our last newsletter, we talked about 4 different styles. If your interviewer is not very chatty in the beginning, they're, hi, how are you? Very structured, very linear. You need to be too.
Mm-hmm.
If the interviewer is, hi, how are you? This is just a conversation. We want to get to know you better. You can be a little bit more chatty with them as well. They're a people person and they really are more conversational. If you have a creative, maybe they bring a problem to you and you're thinking about, you need to be always thinking about, how can I solve their problem? How can I show the data that I've done? So you have to be self-aware enough to know that, for example, my energy is I'm very energetic. I like to chat. I'm a great networker, but not everyone is. So right now, I'm looking for a CFO for a construction company. My interviews are still my style, but I get to like, tell me about accounting. What have you done with this? Why is that this way? Yes, they are, Gina. Linear interviews are uncomfortable interviews. You're right. And really what I have found is that the interviewers are just humans. They really want you to be successful. And so if you just go into the interview like it's another conversation where you are interviewing them as well as them interviewing you, that's all it is. And the other tip that I have to be yourself and authentic is you have to know your values. What are the values that you bring? I'm going to be putting out, so something that you can do to figure out your values is choose 5 people that know you in various ways of depth. And what are the values that they bring to you? It's 1:05. Monica and Sarah, any other topics or?
Like you said, knowing your values. I have that ebook all about personal values you can download. There's a couple of exercises in that book for you to get you thinking. But
Sarah, these questions are awesome.
Yeah, that's foundational to my work as it's foundational to your work, Shelley, right? Values is so important.
Fantastic. Okay. Are there any last questions? We have 5 more minutes and we're happy to answer any questions you have. Thank you, Emma. Thank you, Jennifer. Thank you, Marcia. We really do hope this has been insightful. This is why we do over 24 events per year. In 2 weeks, again on June 6th, we have storytelling and mastering interviewing. So if you do the archetypes, if you learn your style, you're going to get another framework in 2 weeks that will really help you do stories much easier. So without any other questions, I'm going to thank you, Sarah, for putting your ebook in there. Please let us know how we can help you. I know that we are talking heads, but we are human. We want to help you in any way that we can and truly be your best authentic self and combine all of that together. Thank you, Monica. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Yvette, for all of your help. Thank you. I'll be in touch. Thank you, Jolene. All right. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye.